Salam everybody again, and this is your favorite African inspirational story from Isaac Mirori. Continue to subscribe to our YouTube and like. We shall continue from where we stopped last time, and last time we really looked at the personal experience of my great-grandfather with the changing times of colonialism and the entering of the new religion and the schooling system that were antithetical to the African experience. We mentioned about the introduction of identity books that were called kipandes, and the resistance movement that had begun against these new forced changes. We also saw, and we shall continue looking at the transfer of population from their homes to new areas. This was so because three things were happening. One, you had to be alienated so that you could be taken to a forced labor in the new founded white lands farms. And these land, as I had said, the highlands, they were called the White Highlands or the Queensland. And so forced labor was one of the reasons. Another reason was to destroy the African homes. Like I said, my grandfather was a polygamous with 8 wives. And for him, he was faced or slapped with a heart tax, whereby in the Karing'a nation, every woman married to a man had their own hut where they lived with their children. And so hut taxes were designed to destroy this family setup and foundation. So men were forced to live with their many wives in the same hut. And of course this destroyed men, because all these women will never live in peace. Their children will never live in peace. If at all there were favoritism of the man of the house towards other women, probably the younger women, and other children, probably those who were active than others. So this biasness brewed a lot of confusion and conflicts. The third reason was the tax that forced alienation of people from their homes, or rather forced them to be employed by the colonial government on a very low remuneration terms, and you're also forced to join Christianity so that you can get other government services like education and healthcare. So all these were really designed to brood domination of a new culture, a new religious movement, and a narrative was developed to castigate what was African. And so most of the early converts of Christianity did not convert out of conviction. It was out of circumstances and threat to life. And so here we are looking at a lot of development coming in after the First World War. The missionaries who had been at a loggerhead with each other since 1890s, decided to design the Christian missionaries to design spheres of influence, and this was another terrible idea where a certain denomination, Christian denomination, was identified with a certain area. Like, for example, the Church Scotland Mission, which is known today as the Presbyterian of East Africa, concentrated only in central Kenya. The Anglican, which was the Church Mission Society, concentrated in a place like Kabete, and again a place like Nyanza, but some specific, like the American Inland Mission, concentrated in the eastern, and the Friends Quakers concentrated in the lower part of Nyanza next to the lake. And so people identified their ethnic identities with a specific Christian denomination. Again, there was another stereotype where ethnic communities were looked as qualified for some jobs. Like, for example, the most aggressive Nilots were reserved positions as police. There were people from Western Kenya, especially the Luhya land, who were seen as strong people, so they were like guards, and sometimes as cooks. But people from Central, who are the Karing'a, from the Karing'a nation, were seen as more enterprise and thus not befitting for any employment. They were given cash crops to grow, and these cash crops were bought from them by the colonial government at a very cheap price. So one of the facts that faces us today is the fact that a governor called Sir Edward Briggs, who designed all these for the labor development on behalf of the Commonwealth, in 1931 had decided to charge a tax which amounted to 28 shillings. And a lot of Africans were forced to work for free so that they cannot be indebted. And a staggering 12,140,000 were collected from Africans, comparing to what the Europeans had paid as tax back then, which was 250,000. And they had the best jobs, they enjoyed the best government services, and they were comfortable in a foreign land than the people whom this land was bequeathed. So my grandfather, having been compensated the 50 acres, he resulted into a very lonely life with 8 wives and very many children in one hut. He died a miserable man in 1958, but his son, the last born son of the first wife, my grandfather Miruri Wandoaru, fortunately had become so successful. At the age of 23, he built his first permanent house. In 1946, he was a successful plumber. He was employed by white guys who lived in Karen, at current police station, because this is where some of the people lived for their security reasons. And he brought up most of his children in Karen. Even after building the permanent house, he never lived there because by the time he was deciding to live there, already the liberation movement had already taken shape. And to take you back, these are the reasons why the Kikuyu Karing'a Schools Association movement was registered in 1929, so that Africans can find avenues of trying to mitigate and find a way out of this new phenomenon that is full of negative actions. There was another movement that was formed among the Kikuyus from Nyeri and Murang'a. It was called the African Independent Schools Association Movement, which later became a church called the African Independent Pentecostal Church of Kenya. The Karing'a movement, in turn from Kiambu, became the African Orthodox Church of East Africa. Now, these developments saw a lot of change in African cultures. Now, there were new leaders who were imposed, foreign leaders. But before, in the 1500s, the Kikuyu nation, before the Karing'a movement, had developed a leadership strategy, and it was separated from generation to the next. And they used to have a ceremony of the next leadership taking over, called Itweka. Now, in 1500s to 1555, there was the leadership generation called Njiri. This is the first recorded leadership generation. So from 1555 to around 1580, there was another generational leadership called Mamba, and from 1580 to 1620, there was a generational leadership called Tene. From 1620 to 1650, there was Agu. From 1650 to 1720, there was Shuma. From 1720 to 1740, there was Shira. From 1740 to 1785, there was Madhani, which is equivalent to the 10 commandments that were given to the children of Israel. And you see, at this time, already Christianity or Judaism had not entered East Africa yet. But some of these things are consistent, because I always remind people that the Old Testament is the traditional belief, philosophy, ideology, and cultural way of life of the Hebrews. So from 1785 to 1820, there was a generational leadership called Ndemi. And then 1820 to 1850, there was Iregi. And then from 1850 to 1905, there was Maina. And 1905 to today, there is Mwangi. This is the longest serving, together with Maina, leadership, generational leadership. It has ceased from changing because of the disruptions that were brought about by the invasion of the Europeans in the Kikuyu nation, and just as soon as the Karing'a clarion call had been called by the elders. Now, the Karing'a movement continued. I had said earlier that my great grandfather Ndwaru Achege had been born holding something the Kikuyus called mbogo, and so likewise did my grandfather Mwirure Ndwaru. This meant naturally that you were a special person, and so my great grandfather was a traditional priest, as I said earlier, and he was a leader by nature. And so my grandfather, the same, together with his stepsister, they were born, and so they were like an altar girl and an altar boy to my great grandfather. And so my grandfather, now facing the new way of life, becoming very inspirational in the Kikuyu Central Association, the first political movement and party in Kenya that really facilitated the Mau Mau liberation. And he also joined the Kikuyu Karing'a Schools Association movement, and he became a Secretary General. And from there, when it converted to a church in 1942, he was still there, and he was appointed officially, registered in the government as the Secretary General of the African Orthodox Church of East Africa until his retirement in 1997. So I'm all out, guys. That is all we had for today. I wish you the best. Please continue being proud of who you are. We shall continue to learn more as we proceed. Kindly remember to spread the good news about who you are, the mother of all races.